The amber torches cast long shadows over the Thing assembly as Cnut Pendragon stood tall among his warriors, his broad shoulders draped in the skin of a great northern wolf. Thick braids of honeygold hair framed a face hardened by 26 winters and countless battles. The Jarls and Corals fell silent as he stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his father's sword. "Blood calls for blood," Cnut declared, his voice carrying across the gathering. "The Grayston clan has taken what was mine. My father lies in his barrow without vengeance. This cannot stand." The elders nodded in solemn agreement. No Viking could rest while his family's honor remained stained. Ragnar the Red, Cnut's most trusted warrior, clapped his king on the shoulder. "What will you do, my lord?" he asked. "Lead another raid against their shores." Cnut's eyes narrowed, reflecting the flames of the central fire. "No. I will strike at Grimson's heart, as he struck at mine." He raised his voice for all to hear. "I will take his daughter, not as thrall, but as wife. I will make her bear my children while her father lives to watch his bloodline vanish beneath mine." A murmur rippled through the assembly. It was a punishment more cunning than death, to force your enemy to watch as his legacy was consumed by yours. Only Frida, the Volva Ciris, remained unmoved by the declaration. Her ancient eyes found Cnut across the gathering. "Beware, Wolf King," she called. "The Norns weave strange fates. The same thread that binds your vengeance may bind your heart." Cnut dismissed her words with a gesture. The gods had abandoned him when they let his father fall to Grimson's axe. Now he trusted only in steel and in the burning hatred that had sustained him through the 3 winters since his father's death. That night, as snow began to fall outside his long hall, Cnut stared into the hearth fire. His fingers traced the carved runes on his father's drinking horn: strength, honor, vengeance. These were the virtues of a true Viking, not the weak mercy the Christian priests preached in their conquered lands. "I will never forgive them," he whispered to his father's spirit. "Your death will be answered. I swear it by fire and ice." The winds had turned favorable after 7 days at sea, and now Cnut's longship, Dragon's Fury, cut through the waves toward the fjord that led to Grimson territory. 3 other ships followed in formation, their red and black striped sails full with the breath of the gods. Ragnar approached his king at the prow. "We'll reach their village by midday," he said. "Our scouts report their warriors are away raiding to the east." Cnut nodded, running his thumb along the edge of his axe. "Perfect. We'll take what we want without wasting good blood." "And the girl?" "Dagny?" Ragnar asked. "Grimson's precious daughter," Cnut replied, his voice cold. "I've heard she heals their sick and weak instead of letting the unworthy die as nature intends. A soft heart in a hard world." His lip curled. "She will learn the true meaning of loss when she becomes my wife." The attack came swiftly. With most of their warriors gone, the Grayston village stood little chance against Cnut's forces. They did not slaughter indiscriminately. This was not a raid for glory or plunder, but a precise strike to wound Grimson where he would feel it most. Cnut strode through the village, his men securing the perimeter. The sounds of weeping women and children filled his ears, but he remained unmoved. This was justice, not cruelty. "Where is Dagny Grimson?" he demanded of an old woman who stood defiantly before a small hut. "You'll not have her, Wolf King," the crone spat. "She is worth 10 of you." Cnut raised his hand to strike her for her insolence, but a clear voice stopped him. "I am here." She emerged from the hut, and Cnut felt something unexpected stir within him. Dagny Grimson stood straight-backed and unafraid, her auburn hair falling in a thick braid over one shoulder. Her eyes, green as spring leaves, held his without wavering. She wore a simple blue wool dress with a carved bone brooch at her shoulder, no ornaments of gold or silver as he had expected of a Jarl's daughter. "If you've come for me," she continued, "then leave the others in peace." Cnut found his voice. "You know who I am?" "Cnut Pendragon. The Wolf King." Her gaze never faltered. "My father warned you would come for vengeance someday. Then you know why I'm here." He stepped closer, towering over her, expecting fear. Instead, she nodded once. You believe my father killed yours? He did, Cnut snarled. He split his skull with an axe during the Battle of Raven's Ford. Dagny's expression remained calm. And now you will take me as your wife to humiliate him. To watch his bloodline disappear into yours. Her understanding of his plan, spoken so plainly, unsettled him. You will come willingly. If you swear by the gods that no one else in this village will be harmed. Cnut studied her face, looking for the fear or hatred he expected. He found neither, only a steady resolve that he had seen in the eyes of warriors before battle. I so swear, he said finally. By Thor's hammer. She turned to gather her belongings, and an old woman clutched at her arm, whispering urgently. Dagny embraced her, then several children who ran to her with tears streaming down their faces. I'll return, she promised them softly. Have courage. As they sailed away with Dagny aboard the Dragon's Fury, Cnut watched her. She stood at the ship's edge, her back straight, watching her home disappear on the horizon. Not once did she weep. Ragnar approached, his voice low. She's braver than I expected. She's a grim son, Cnut replied coldly. They've always hidden their fear well. It matters not, she'll break eventually. But something in the steadiness of her gaze made him wonder if he had misjudged his prey. The wedding was held 3 days after their return to Pendragon lands. No celebration, no feasting, only the bare minimum required by custom and the gods. Dagny wore the cream-colored wedding dress provided to her, her face expressionless as the ceremony proceeded. Cnut spoke the required vows with clenched teeth, the gold arm ring he placed on her wrist a mockery of the love such rings usually signified. That night, as custom demanded he claim his bride, Cnut entered the chamber prepared for them. Dagny sat on the edge of the bed, her hair unbound as tradition required, falling in waves down her back. She looked up at him without fear. Will you force yourself upon me, Wolf King? The question struck him like a physical blow. He had imagined this moment differently, her cowering, begging, her suffering a balm to his hatred. Instead, her quiet dignity made him the one who felt diminished. I am not a rapist, he growled. Whatever else you think of me. She held his gaze. What am I to think of you? You've taken me from my home to punish my father for a deed he swears he did not commit. He lies. As all men might when facing an enemy's vengeance. She rose from the bed, surprisingly tall now that she stood before him. But I will not lie to you, Cnut Pendragon. I will be your wife in name, for now. I will keep your hall and perform my duties. But I will not give myself to a man whose heart is consumed by hatred. Cnut felt rage rise within him. You think you have a choice? We all have choices, she answered simply. Even when it seems we don't. You chose vengeance over truth. I choose dignity over surrender. He could have taken her then, she was his by law and custom. Instead, he found himself backing away from her steady gaze. Keep your dignity then, he snarled. It will not save your father when he returns to find his daughter married to his enemy. He left her alone that night, sleeping instead in the great hall among his warriors. When questioned, he claimed he would not bed the daughter of his enemy until her father witnessed their union from chains. In truth, something in her quiet strength had unsettled him more deeply than he cared to admit. Days passed into weeks. Dagny moved through Cnut's household like a ghost, performing her duties as mistress of the hall without complaint. The servants, initially hostile to the enemy's daughter, gradually warmed to her gentle guidance and fair treatment. She tended the sick with herbs and poultices, listened to disputes with patience, and managed the stores with careful wisdom. Cnut watched her from a distance, his hatred complicated by confusion. This was not how his revenge was supposed to unfold. She should be broken, miserable, not slowly winning the loyalty of his own people. One evening, as snow fell thick outside, he found her sitting alone by the hearth, weaving a pattern he didn't recognize into cloth. What is that design? He asked, surprising himself with the question. She didn't look up. It's a healing pattern. My grandmother taught me that certain weaves can capture blessings for the wearer. You believe such things? Now she met his eyes. Don't you pray to Thor for strength in battle? To Freya for fertility? To Odin for wisdom? Why shouldn't the work of women's hands carry power too? He had no answer for that. He sat across from her, watching the firelight play across her features. Who is this for? Sigrid's child. The fever took a strong hold last night. Sigrid was one of his thralls, her child barely 2 winters old. You tend to thralls' children. I tend to any who need healing, she replied simply. Sickness doesn't care about rank or status. Neither do I. My father would say that's weakness, Cnut said, repeating the lessons of his youth. And what would your mother say? Dagny countered. The question caught him off guard. His mother had died when he was young, but he remembered her gentle hands and the songs she sang while treating wounded warriors. She was a healer too, he admitted quietly. Dagny nodded, continuing her work. Then perhaps she would understand that strength takes many forms. He left her then, unsettled by how easily she had found the soft place in his memory. The next day, a messenger arrived with news. Hakon Grimson had returned to his village and discovered his daughter's fate. He was gathering forces to attack Pendragon lands. Cnut called his warriors together, his hatred reignited by the promise of finally facing his enemy in battle. We will meet them before they reach our shores, he declared. And this time, I will take Grimson's head myself. Later, he found Dagny in the storeroom, counting preserved meats. Your father comes with warriors, he told her, expecting to see hope or defiance in her eyes. Instead, she set down her tally stick with a sigh. Then more will die for this feud. He killed my father. So you say. She faced him fully now. But I have known my father all my life, Cnut Pendragon. He is proud and fierce in battle, yes. But he is also a man of honor who taught me that true strength lies in knowing when not to strike. Honor. Cnut laughed bitterly. He struck my father from behind during a parley. There were witnesses. Something changed in Dagny's expression. Who? Who witnessed this? Thorstein the Brown. He saw it clearly. Dagny went very still. Thorstein. The man who now sits at my father's right hand as his chief advisor. A chill ran through Cnut. What are you saying? I'm saying that perhaps you should question why the man who witnessed your father's death now holds the position that would have been yours had you not become enemies with my father. The thought had never occurred to Cnut. Thorstein had been his father's friend, a trusted warrior. He had held Cnut back from charging into battle as his father fell. He had guided the young heir's hatred toward the Grimsons all these years. You lie to protect your father, he said, but the conviction had left his voice. I have never lied to you, Wolf King, Dagny replied. Can Thorstein say the same? Cnut sailed with 30 warriors to meet Grimson's force, but he ordered them to carry the white flag of parley alongside their war banners. Dagny stood on the shore watching them depart, her face unreadable. The two forces met on a small, rocky island that had long served as neutral ground for negotiations between clans. Cnut stepped ashore with only Ragnar at his side. Across the rocky beach, Hakon Grimson waited with Thorstein and another warrior. Grimson was older than Cnut remembered, his red beard now streaked with grey, but his eyes burned with the same intensity. Where is my daughter, Wolf King? He demanded. Safe, Cnut answered. And she will remain so, regardless of what happens here today. Grimson's eyes narrowed. You take my child as hostage and expect me to believe you mean her no harm. I took her as wife, Cnut corrected, watching Thorstein's reaction carefully. The older warrior's face remained impassive, but Cnut noticed his hand tightening on his axe handle. Why have you called for parley instead of battle? Grimson asked. Have you lost your taste for vengeance? I seek truth before more blood is spilled, Cnut replied. He turned to Thorstein. You told me you saw Hakon Grimson strike down my father during the Battle of Raven's Ford. You said he attacked from behind during a moment of truce. Thorstein's face darkened. I did. And it is true. I saw it with my own eyes. Yet Grimsun denies it, Cnut continued. And my wife, the word felt strange on his tongue, tells me you benefited greatly from the feud that followed. Your wife is the enemy's daughter. Thorstein spat. She poisons your mind with lies. Hakon Grimsun studied Cnut's face. I did not kill your father, Wolf King. I respected Cnut Pendragon as a worthy opponent. I would never dishonor myself or him with such a cowardly act. He lies? Thorstein shouted, his composure cracking. Will you believe Grimsun over me, who has served you since your father's death? Cnut met Grimsun's eyes, searching for deceit and finding none. Then he looked at Thorstein, seeing the fear beginning to show through his rage. There is one way to know the truth, Cnut said. The gods see all. I challenge you, Thorstein, to Holmgang. If you speak truth, the gods will give you victory. Thorstein paled. You would fight your father's loyal friend based on the whispers of a grim sun witch. I would know the truth, Cnut replied. By steel and blood. The duel was arranged at once. A square of hide was pegged out on the beach, and both men took their positions. Cnut carried his father's sword, Thorstein wielded the axe he had always favored. As they fought, Cnut saw the desperation in the older warrior's eyes. Thorstein fought not with the confidence of the righteous, but with the fear of a man whose lies were unraveling. When Cnut's blade finally found its mark, piercing Thorstein's shoulder, the older warrior fell to his knees. Mercy, he gasped. The truth, Cnut demanded, his blade at Thorstein's throat. Or meet the gods with a lie on your lips. Thorstein's eyes darted to Grimsun, then back to Cnut. I killed him, he whispered. Sigurd discovered I had been stealing from the clan's treasury. He was going to expose me at the thing. I struck him down during the battle and blamed Grimsun. A roar of rage tore from Cnut's throat. 3 years of hatred, of planning vengeance against the wrong man. 3 years of his life consumed by a lie. Kill him and be done, Ragnar urged. Cnut raised his sword, every instinct calling for blood. Then he remembered Dagny's words, true strength lies in knowing when not to strike. He lowered his blade. Your life is forfeit to me, but I will not take it. Instead, you will confess your crime before the thing. You will be outlawed, your name stricken from our clan's history. He turned to Hakon Grimsun, whose face showed shock at the revelation. I have done you and your daughter a grave wrong, based on a lie. I offer Wergild for the pain I have caused. Hakon shook his head slowly. My daughter was taken by force. Gold cannot repay such a debt. Then what would you ask of me? Cnut questioned. Return her to me, unharmed. End this false marriage. Cnut felt an unexpected twist in his chest at the thought of Dagny leaving. And if she wishes to stay? Both Hakon and Ragnar stared at him in surprise. Why would she wish to remain with her captor? Hakon asked. Cnut had no answer that made sense even to himself. Let her choose, he said finally. We will return to my lands together. You will see she is unharmed. Then she may decide her own fate. The return journey was tense, with Hakon Grimsun and his warriors following Cnut's ships back to Pendragon lands. Cnut kept replaying Thorstein's confession in his mind, shame burning through him at how easily he had been manipulated. When they arrived, Dagny was waiting at the dock. Her face lit with joy at the sight of her father, and she ran to embrace him. Cnut watched their reunion with a complex ache in his chest. Later, in the Great Hall, Cnut told the assembled clan the truth of Thorstein's betrayal. Murmurs of shock and anger rippled through the crowd. Thorstein knelt in chains, his head bowed. For 3 years, I have led us in hatred against the wrong enemy, Cnut concluded. I have shamed our clan with a dishonorable abduction. The fault is mine for believing lies without seeking truth. He turned to Hakon Grimsun. Before all witnesses, I renounce any claim on Dagny Grimsun forced through my ignorance. She is free to return with her father, with my deepest apologies and whatever compensation he deems fair. All eyes turned to Dagny, who stood beside her father. She stepped forward, her gaze steady on Cnut's face. "I came as your captive," she said, her voice clear in the silent hall. "In these months, I have seen both darkness and light in you, Wolf King. You took me in hatred, yet you treated me with respect. You threatened vengeance, yet you sought truth when it would have been easier to cling to your rage." She glanced at her father, then back to Cnut. "I will return with my father now. Blood has nearly been shed over a lie. Both our clans need time to heal." Cnut nodded, ignoring the hollow feeling her words created. It was just. It was right. He had no claim to her. But Dagny continued, surprising him, "If you would seek a true alliance between our clans, one built on honor rather than deceit, I would consider a proper courtship, conducted according to our traditions." Hakon Grimson looked startled, but did not object. Cnut found himself without words, the hatred that had defined him for so long suddenly replaced by something unfamiliar. "I would welcome such an opportunity," he managed finally. Spring came to the northern lands, the ice retreating from the fjords. Cnut sailed once more to Grimson territory, this time with gifts rather than weapons. The traditional courtship had proceeded through winter, with formal exchanges of messengers and tokens. This visit would determine whether Dagny would accept his final suit. He had never felt such uncertainty before battle. Hakon Grimson received him with cautious respect. The tale of Torstein's betrayal had spread, and the old blood feud had been replaced by an uneasy truce. Dagny met him by the shore, looking more radiant than he remembered in a green dress that matched her eyes, her station now properly reflected in the silver brooches at her shoulders. "Wolf King," she greeted him, a small smile playing at her lips. "I no longer deserve that name," he replied. "I was a poor excuse for a wolf, snapping at shadows while the true predator walked by my side." She tilted her head. "Then who are you now, Cnut Pendragon?" He considered this. A man trying to build rather than destroy. A man who has learned that vengeance is a poor substitute for justice, and that hatred is a hollow replacement for honor. They walked along the shore together, speaking of the changes in both their clans since winter. Cnut had redistributed the wealth Torstein had stolen, establishing new trade agreements with neighboring settlements. Dagny had expanded her healing work, taking on apprentices to preserve her knowledge. "My father says you've changed," she said as they paused to look out over the water. "For the better, I hope." He believes so. She turned to face him. "As do I." The wind caught her hair, sending strands of it dancing across her face. Without thinking, Cnut reached to brush them back, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "I took you as revenge," he said softly. "I kept you out of pride. I let you go because it was right. Now I return to ask properly for what I never deserved." He knelt before her, offering up the carved wooden box he had carried. Inside lay a bride price worthy of a jarl's daughter, gold arm rings, silver brooches, and amber beads. But beneath these traditional gifts was something else, a small carved wooden figure of a wolf and a woman standing side by side. "I made this myself," he said as she lifted it, examining the detailed work. "To remember that you saw the man behind the wolf when I could not see it myself." Dagny closed her fingers around the carving. "Ask your question, Cnut Pendragon. Dagny Grimson, will you join our clans through marriage? Not as conquest or submission, but as equal partners in creating something stronger than either could be alone." Her smile bloomed fully now. "Yes. But on one condition." "Name it." "That you remember always what brought us together was not the hatred you carried, but your willingness to set it aside for truth." Cnut rose, taking her hands in his. "I will carry that lesson like a torch against the darkness." Their wedding feast lasted 3 days. Warriors from both clans sat side by side, sharing mead and stories. What had begun in vengeance was transformed into a celebration of new beginnings. Frida the Volva blessed their union, reminding all that the Norns weave fates beyond mortal understanding. That night, as they finally stood alone in their chamber, Dagny looked up at her husband, truly her husband now, by choice rather than force. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "The time lost to hatred?" Cnut shook his head. The gods put us on the path we needed to walk. Without that hatred, I might never have found you. Without that wound, I might never have learned to heal. He drew her into his arms, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. My father taught me that a Viking's greatest strength is his sword arm. You taught me that true strength lies in knowing when to set down the sword entirely. Dagny reached up to trace the lines of his face, now softened by something other than vengeance. And what will we teach our children? That blood feuds end, but blood bonds endure. That honor is found not in how fiercely you fight your enemies, but in how honestly you face yourself. He pressed his forehead to hers. And that sometimes, the gods send us not what we want, but what we need, even when it comes in the form we least expect. Outside their window, the northern lights danced across the sky, green and purple ribbons weaving together just as their lives now intertwined. Where there had been hatred, now grew love. Where there had been vengeance, now bloomed truth. The Wolf King had found his heart at last, guided by the gentle hands of the woman he had once sought to break, but who had instead made him whole.